My name is Rick, and during my high school and college years, most people who met me would have the impression that I was a computer geek. I'm not unattractive, but I'm definitely not the most handsome guy on earth. I'm 6 feet tall, weigh about 170 pounds, and have light brown hair. I have dated, and I can't remember a time when I wasn't interested in computers, computer programs, and video games. Anyone with computer problems knows who to call, and that's me. It was exactly like this that I met Karen, the woman who later became my wife. Everything began 7 years ago, when we were both students at the University of Wisconsin. She was in the field of legal studies, and I was in the field of computer science. Of course, Karen's goal was to become a corporate lawyer, while I wanted to learn more about computers and programming. She had trouble understanding her computer system, so she went to a professor in the computer science department, who then referred her to me. I helped her understand her system, and she became very good at various computer tasks. At the same time, we became friends and spent a lot of time together. Now I have to talk about Karen. She is a very charming 5 feet 4 inches tall blonde with a very perfect 36-24-36 figure. In fact, she is very hot. She also has a very good personality and seems to get along well with everyone she meets. It's easy to like her, and I do like her very much. In fact, in a very short time, I fell deeply in love with her. She is everything most men dream of, and of course, what I hope to find. But I did find her, she understood me, and fell in love with me. Stranger things may have happened, but I don't know what they are. After 2 years at school, Karen realized that she would not achieve her goal of becoming a lawyer, but she was still interested in legal work, so she applied for a job as a legal secretary. She was eventually hired by a major brokerage firm, and she immediately liked the job. In 2 months, we got married, and she continued to work while supporting me to finish my studies. Through her hard work, dedication, and friendliness over the past 5 years, she has been promoted and transferred to the headquarters in Chicago to be an assistant to the manager of the company's legal department. I got my degree in computer science and decided that I could lead a very good life by writing computer game programs. I founded my own company, and in the past few years, I have written many very popular computer games that you or your children will definitely recognize. I made a lot of money, and I really don't need to work very hard anymore. We moved to Hyde Park, a suburb of Chicago, along Lake Michigan. Because both of us do well in our work, Karen and I have built a very comfortable life, and we work because we like it, not because we have to. To avoid going crazy from too much activity, I secretly established another company in Milwaukee, about an hour's drive away, to investigate computer software fraud, to meet Siffy Company. Through some secret contacts from the Institute of Computer Technology, I started with a small customer list, which has been growing through word-of-mouth advertising. Siffy currently has about 150 customers, and at any time, they may be working on 5 or 6 projects. Companies using our services are very satisfied with our work, and the profits are very generous. Last year, our total revenue exceeded $3 million. I hired a very capable office manager named Carrie, and signed contracts with more than a dozen computer geeks like me, letting them do most of the investigation work. We let them rotate on projects so they won't be too familiar with the customers. The only actual employees of the company are Carrie and me, and the investigators get a certain proportion of the fee according to the projects they do. For me, because the software industry has huge profits and the demand for confidentiality and secrets is quite extreme, I have always kept anonymous. In fact, no one in the company knows me, not even Carrie, because I always wear disguises to hide my real identity. When I investigate, I wear such disguises, and when I hire Carrie, I wear disguises to keep my participation a secret. Over the years, I have become very good at developing new disguises to fool everyone. When I investigate a case, I am paid like other investigators, but my payment goes into a separate account I set up under an alias. As I said, most investigations are done by my contract workers, but about once a quarter, I personally take on a job, just for fun. Karen doesn't know CSI, so I use the excuse of going to Milwaukee to see my game distributor to leave for a few days to investigate. In fact, all my computer game business is done through the internet. For CSI, I drive to the company's apartment in Milwaukee, park my BMW in the garage, change into my disguise, and then drive a company car, which is currently a Buick, to the office to pick up investigation materials, and then go to the place I need to work. Sometimes it's local, but sometimes it's in New York or Chicago or anywhere. I finish the work, return to Milwaukee, and then go home. You might think that when I do all this travel, I'm cheating, seizing every opportunity to date some women, and deceiving my wife. But the truth is far from that. You might think that when I do all this travel, I'm cheating, seizing every opportunity to date some women, and deceiving my wife. But the truth is far from that. I love my wife beyond my own understanding, and I will never do anything to harm her or my marriage. Unfortunately, Karen's situation is not the same, and that's why I write this story. I personally took over an investigation of Marco's software to determine whether one of their programmers was selling source code to competitors. Jeff Marcos designed a program to track secure transactions, and I think it will let me deeply understand Karen's work, so I personally took over this investigation. The company is located in Oak Creek, another suburb of Chicago, although it might be interesting to go to some restaurants and clubs in my old place. When I am disguised, who knows, maybe I will meet some friends, and I can play with them. I don't know what I will really encounter, what I will investigate. I got all the information I needed from my office manager Carrie, and I settled down in the Drake Hotel in Oak Creek, just a short drive away from Marcos Software. After I arrived at Marcos, after a short wait, I was greeted by Jeff Marcos. He is tall, dark, handsome, and a copy of the traditional model of a man that women would find attractive. Jeff is also very outgoing and friendly, and he has a presence that makes me feel at ease, and I really find myself liking this man. He invited me into his office to discuss his suspicions and how he thought I should proceed with the investigation. He prepared everything I needed in his office and informed everyone that I was a special project manager working with one of their clients to resolve issues with a program application. I thought it would go well, so we took this approach. On the second day of my presence there, I discovered that Jeff's suspicions were correct. One of his people, a programmer named Tom, was selling the source code and how he was doing it. As I was writing my report, Jeff's phone started ringing. It was on the table next to me, and Jeff was out of the room, so I glanced at it. To my complete surprise, the caller ID displayed my wife Karen's mobile number. My first reaction was to grab the phone and surprise her, thinking how shocked she would be to find out that her company somehow used Jeff's software and that I was working here. But of course, then all my efforts to keep the secret of the CSEFI company and my identity would be lost, so I sat there, mocking the irony of the whole situation. Soon after, Jeff returned to his office and answered my wife's call. My laughter quickly turned into a heart-wrenching feeling of nausea when I heard him say, "Karen, I'm glad you called me. I had a great time last night. Can you meet me for dinner at Morton's at 6:30 p.m.? Okay, I'll see you there, and then we'll go to your place for dessert. Bye, sexy." You could have knocked me over with a feather. I was shocked, and I must have looked like a zombie. I felt like my breakfast would end up on the table in front of me. My heart was pounding, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I made an excuse to go to the men's room and sat in a stall until my heart calmed down and I could think again. How could Karen do this? I thought she loved me as much as I loved her, but she was meeting Jeff again tonight, and he said he liked last night. He said things to her that you don't say to someone unless you've had a sexual relationship with them. How could this be? I don't understand at all. I didn't have a clue, not a single one. Karen had been cheating on me. Our sex life was great, and she never complained about me not satisfying her sexual needs. I was completely at a loss. I just don't understand, and my heart has been breaking. I must tell you, I was there, feeling like my world was ending. All my efforts were for Karen and me, and now I don't know anymore. When I calmed down and stopped losing my mind, I decided I needed to verify my suspicions instead of continuing. Once I had all the facts, or as many as I could gather, I would make a plan of action. I returned to Jeff's office and sat down to complete the project so that I could spend the next few days figuring out what exactly had happened. It was very difficult for me to sit there because I wanted to attack him, but I knew it would be a mistake. What was worse, Jeff had this big smile on his face and apologized to me for talking like that in front of me. He said, "I'm sorry for speaking those words in front of you, but that woman is so sexy. I met her a few weeks ago in a client's office, and we hit it off immediately." At that moment, I hated him, but I could understand why Karen would like him because he is very charming in his speech. He continued, "She told me the next time her husband, she called him Computer Boy, he laughed, was on a business trip, she would call me, and we would meet. Well, she called yesterday, who could refuse a beautiful woman like her?" I was dying inside, but I held on. She called yesterday, who could refuse a beautiful woman like her? I was dying inside, but I held on. He told me that she told him she married Computer Boy because she knew he would eventually become rich, which would give her a good life, and she could continue to cheat on handsome men like me. He laughed again. I asked her if she didn't love him, and she said she did, but she also liked to enjoy great sex on the side. I couldn't believe it. I had collected so much information from him, and he didn't know who I was, of course, nor what I was planning to do. At that moment, I was sure beyond a doubt that he was talking about my Karen because of the comment about Computer Boy. It was clear that she had cheated on me with him, and obviously, there were others in our marriage. I realized that I knew a lot, but I needed more evidence, and then I would take action. I told Jeff that I needed to leave for the whole day and would come back the next morning. When I got to my car, I called Karen on my mobile. She was very sweet and lovely, telling me how much she missed me, which made me want to vomit again, knowing that it was all false. I asked her about her plans for the day, and she said she was going to work all day and might go out for dinner with some friends. I told her that I might not be home for another day or two, and then I would call her later tonight. She said not to call because she didn't know how long she would be out with her friends, and she really didn't want to be disturbed while she was having sex with Jeff. I knew I had to catch her cheating on me, and I knew what to do. On my way home, I stopped at an electronics store and bought 5 new mini wireless surveillance cameras and a modem so that I could monitor the kitchen, living room, family room, master bedroom, and our guest room. I didn't know where she would take him to cheat on him, but I hoped to cover wherever they went. When I got home, I used the remote control to turn off the security cameras and drove into the garage so that no one would notice the strange car on the driveway. I walked into the house, rewound the videotape so that my arrival would not be detected. I installed all the surveillance cameras and connected the output to the modem and video recorder I set up in my basement studio. This way, I could dial up online to access the output and monitor the entire house without anyone knowing. Satisfied with my work, I left the house, got in the car, and backed out of the driveway. I drove around the block, and as I passed by, I reactivated the security cameras with the remote control. She would never know what happened at home unless she looked very carefully at the security videotapes and noticed the time intervals, and Karen never checked the videotapes. It was my affair. By the time I finished all this, I started to feel a bit hungry, so I went to a small pizzeria near the hotel for a meal. I only had a few beers because I wanted to stay sober and monitor what was happening at home. After dinner, I drove to the hotel and set up my computer so I could see what was happening. Even after hearing all of this, I still hoped it was a big mistake, that it wasn't her, that she didn't deceive me, that she wasn't just after a lifestyle. I was extremely sad, and I finally broke down and cried. Around 8 p.m., I saw her car pull into the garage, and I could easily tell that she was alone. My heart skipped a beat, thinking that maybe nothing would happen, but a few minutes later, the security camera was turned off, and I could no longer see the driveway. I switched to the kitchen camera and saw her come in. She was wearing one of my favorite outfits, a short black dress with a rather low neckline, held up by thin straps. I liked her in that dress until that moment. I knew she would never wear that dress to go out for dinner with her friends. She usually wore that dress to attract a man, usually me, but not tonight. Tears streamed down my face again as I finally realized that this was not a mistake. Karen was not who I thought she was. I didn't have to wait long before Jeff walked into the kitchen. She had obviously left the garage door open, and he drove his car into my parking spot, so the neighbors couldn't see his car. When he walked into the kitchen, Karen melted into his arms, and he gave her a kiss, stroking her back continuously. I could see her giving in to him. She broke the kiss and suggested why we didn't move to the bedroom. She picked up a bottle of wine and 2 wine glasses, and as they left the kitchen, I switched to the living room camera, only to see them pass by. On the way to the bedroom, I don't know why, I was thinking, I hoped she would at least cheat on him in the guest room, not in our bed. How absurd the thought was, but I did have that thought. But that was not the case. When I switched to the guest room camera, there was nothing there. So I switched to our bedroom, and they were sitting on the bed kissing. Karen opened the bottle and poured each of them a glass. "To handsome men and wonderful sex," she said. He raised his glass. They clinked glasses and drank about half of the wine, then put the glasses down. Jeff stood up, and Karen undid his pants. I could see the smile on her face. I just couldn't believe it was happening, right in front of me. No, I didn't want it to happen. If this was the first time there was any sign, I wouldn't be here spying on it. I would have stopped it at home. But there were signs that this was not the first time. So what good would it do to stop this time? She would just do it again at a different time. I needed my evidence, and then I would figure out what to do. Well, everything I didn't want to happen, happened. "Oh, Jeff, this is the best I've ever had. Last night was great, but this time it's incredible. I love the way you play with me. I just love it. I may never let Computer Boy deceive me again." Then she laughed. "Can we do this again tomorrow night? The incompetent one won't be home for a few days." But at that moment, my heart broke. Before she said those words, I thought she loved me, but just wanted more sex, which I didn't give her. Before she said those words, I thought I would confront her, and she would stop because she loved me. But with that comment, I knew she really didn't love me. Humiliating me in front of her lover. She obviously didn't consider. At that moment, I knew our marriage would end, because I wouldn't. I couldn't live with someone who didn't love me, didn't respect me. No matter how much I loved her. She obviously didn't love or respect me. My love. I didn't want it to happen. I never dreamed it would happen. But it's dead. I turned off everything. I had all the evidence I needed, to be honest. I didn't want to see anymore. I don't know what else they did. I don't know if he stayed overnight or left immediately. I don't need to know anymore. How can you be more broken than my heart? At that time, my love was already dead, but I still needed to mourn its loss. I just turned off everything. Went to bed. Cried until it was time to get up in the morning. I got up, looked in the mirror, knowing I would have a bad day. My eyes were swollen. I was a mess, but I knew what I had to do today. I've been thinking about how to end our marriage. To be honest, how to destroy her as much as she hurt me. Yes, I know seeking revenge is immature. But I really feel like I need to destroy her. To start healing. I don't have much hostility towards Jeff either. But he sleeps with another man's wife. Destroy their marriage, and then escape unscathed. It's not right. I will retaliate. And then maybe I can put everything behind me. I went to Jeff's office and started to implement my plan. It's easy for me, Computer Boy. Let it happen. I won't leave any clues that it was me. I don't even want to hurt him physically anymore. I just want revenge. The cost for both of them will be high. When Jeff went to the conference room for a staff meeting, I found his keys. I went and copied one so I could get into his house, where he archived his source code copies. I already had access to his computer system, but I hacked his security files. Got all his passwords and those of his programmers. I wrote a small virus program. It will delete his source code. It will look for all copies of his program on every drive on the network, including the computer he connected at home, and all his clients. I know when I activate that program, all passwords will be changed, so no one can get into the system. All copies of his precious program will be destroyed forever. He will too. Then I hacked into my wife's work computer, used her password to access the tracking program. I transferred $200,000 from my business account to Jeff's account. Then transferred to the account I set up in the Cayman Islands in his name. Then I went back and hastily wiped away the money trail. It will be difficult, but a good analyst will eventually be able to track the money, I'm sure. I don't know if Jeff and Karen were together again on Wednesday night, but I guess they did. I really don't care anymore. Thursday morning, I triggered my virus program to run. Friday morning at 9 a.m. I handed Jeff my software code theft report and told him CSF I would charge him for my services. I know it's a bill that will never be paid, but I don't care. As I left his office, he told me, "It was nice to know you, I think. If only you knew. You wouldn't say that." But I smiled, held his hand, and said good luck to him. He would need it. I went to his house, let myself in with my copied key, found all the saved copies of his program. I took them and headed to Milwaukee. Once I got to my apartment, I made a fire in the fireplace and destroyed them. I wanted to retaliate against him, but I also had my honor, and did not intend to profit from his programming. I stayed there on Thursday night, waiting for it to erupt. How did things unfold? On Friday morning, I went to the office and let Carrie know that I had completed the project. Marco's software could be built. She told me she would handle it, and my payment would be transferred to my account. I drove home, walked into the house and found Karen crying. She told me she had been sent home, awaiting an investigation into a security fraud involving the transfer of funds from our business account. I pretended to be shocked. Let her tell me the details. She told me what she knew about the money being transferred to one Jeff Marcos, and that was it. I asked her if she knew Jeff Marcos. She said she had seen him in the office a few weeks ago, but she really didn't know him, and didn't know what had happened at Marcos Software. On Friday morning at 9 o'clock, when everyone was working hard, suddenly everything died. All the programmers couldn't access the system. Jeff couldn't access the system either. The phone was ringing non-stop, because all their customers couldn't use the tracking program. I didn't see all this, but I knew it was happening, as I described. Of course, I later learned that Jeff fired Tom for stealing the source code. And after everything became dead, he also blamed Tom. Oh, Tom was not innocent either, so he should pay the price too. You know, I'm a programmer. Anyone who messes with the source code should be punished. Oh, Tom was not innocent either, so he should pay the price too. You know, I'm a programmer. Anyone who messes with the source code should be punished. They traced $200,000 to Jeff's account. He denied knowing anything about it, and blamed Karen for it. She denied knowing anything about it, and blamed Jeff for it. During the investigation, I stayed calm until Jeff inadvertently revealed that they had a sexual relationship. Then I confronted Karen. She admitted everything, crying and saying she was very sorry, and asked if I could forgive her. She said it was the only time she had done such a thing, and only did it this once, because she was lonely. I was away longer than usual. I knew it was a lie, but I didn't even question it. It was no longer important. Jeff was found guilty of securities fraud and was fined $50,000. But he also saw 6 months in prison. I heard he was released after 3 months for good behavior. But of course when he came out, he no longer had his program or his company. The last I heard, He was working as a programmer for one of his competitors. Ironically, Tom was working in the same place too. Karen was fired. I told her I couldn't forgive her infidelity and sent her divorce papers. I cited the infidelity clause in our marriage contract. Remember, I'm a computer geek. In her settlement, she only got 10% of our net assets. She was fined $50,000 for securities fraud and was sentenced to 3 years of probation. She was lucky not to go to jail, but she was left with only $150,000 to live on. Her share was $200,000. She couldn't even buy a decent house in the Chicago area with that much money. So she ended up moving to Milwaukee, working as a waitress in a bar. I believe she will do well, because she still has that sexy figure. But she will not live the good life she had with me. Computer boy. I hope she always remembers how much I loved her, and how painful she will feel when she thinks of me. I sold the house in Highland Park and moved to an apartment in Milwaukee. I still have $18 million in our mutual fund and another $12 million in my CSL account. I decided it was time for me to enjoy my wealth. I sold the company for an additional $4 million and knew it was time for Carrie to meet her real boss. She said she always knew it was me, no matter what disguise I used. Must love that woman. I often do, and do it well. Neither of us works full-time anymore. We are just enjoying the fruits of our labor. We got married shortly after my divorce was finalized, and we are expecting our first child, due in December this year. When I feel like doing actual work, I write programs. This story is a complex and emotionally charged story of betrayal and revenge. It depicts a profound exploration of personal transformation in the face of infidelity, using technology as a key element of the plot. The protagonist's journey from a betrayed husband to a vengeful character raises important questions about morality and justice, making it a thought-provoking narrative. Story 2. When I first met my wife, we fell deeply in love with each other. We both knew almost immediately that we were meant to be together. My wife got pregnant while we were still dating. We thought the right thing to do was to get married. For the first 5 years of our relationship, everything felt very natural. We were happily married. We had a child that we both deeply loved. I had a good job, she stayed at home, taking care of our child. Before we were together, she was actually engaged to another man. As far as I know, she broke up with him a few weeks before I met her. She told me it didn't feel right. She didn't want to be with him. So she broke up with him and moved out of his house. After that, she went to a bar with her best friend. That's where she met me. I always thought the timing was perfect. I thought it was fate. If she hadn't broken up with that guy, we would never have been together. And I wouldn't have had the perfect life I had. I often traveled for work. It was never a big problem for us. At most I would be away from home for 2 or 3 days a month. And it was always on weekdays. I insisted on my employer that I could spend the weekends with my family, so we could make memories together. The first time I noticed something was wrong was during a short business trip. I had to fly to Montana to meet with a client, but they canceled at the last minute due to a family emergency. I decided to take advantage of the extra time to surprise my family. A weekend trip to the beach or something. I got on the next flight home and called my wife when I arrived at the airport. She didn't answer. The first few times I called her, it was very unusual for her. She was always by the phone. Not answering the phone was strange. In the end, she picked up the phone to see what was going on. She seemed annoyed that I called. She rarely spoke to me in that tone, especially when I was out of town. I asked her if everything was okay. She snapped at me a bit, saying everything was fine. I told her I was on my way home via Uber. She seemed quite shocked. I heard a lot of movement in the background. But at the time, I assumed she was the one moving. I never thought anything suspicious was happening. She hung up the phone. When I got home, she was disheveled. Her cheeks were flushed, as if she had been running. She was wearing some pajama shorts and a sweater put on inside out. I know that taking care of children can be sometimes exhausting. But it didn't seem like that was the problem. I asked her if everything was okay. She told me everything was fine. She was just surprised to see me so early. I told her my plans. To spend the weekend on the beach. She immediately rushed to start packing, so we could leave in the morning. She seemed relieved to get away from me. I packed my work stuff. To pack some clothes for the trip. I found a black sock, which I thought was not mine. I picked it up and showed it to my wife, asking her what it was. It was a suspicious thing. She was confused about what I was asking, swearing that the sock was mine. I'm not lying. She is the one who handles all the laundry at home. She buys a lot of my clothes. Probably knows my wardrobe better than I do. I told her I didn't think it was mine. But she insisted it was mine. In the end, I gave up and believed what she said. Months passed. I didn't notice anything else happening. By then I had completely forgotten about the sock. One day I came home from work early. I found my wife crying in our bathtub. There was no water in the bathtub. She was dressed, just hiding in the bathtub and crying. I rushed over immediately. Asked her what happened. Made sure she was okay. She almost couldn't express in words what had happened. For me, I was terrified. I hurried to check on our children throughout the house, to make sure they were all right. I called her mother and asked what happened. She didn't know either. My first reaction was that someone had died. But when I spoke to her mother, the people who might cause her such a reaction, I started to think something else was happening. I checked our security camera footage to make sure no one had broken into the house. But I found nothing there. The only thing left was to check her phone, to see if there was any indication of what had happened. It wasn't that I was trying to catch her at anything. My wife was hysterically crying in the bathtub. I needed to figure out what had happened, so I could help her. She had it with her in the bathtub. I went over and took it from her hand. She resisted a bit, giving it to me. I unlocked it. The open screen was a message exchange between her and a man we called Tim. These messages were all very romantic. They told each other they were in love. They missed each other. And how excited they were to be together. When I was away next week, I didn't know what to do. My wife was hysterically crying in the bathtub. I cared for her. Seeing her like that was heartbreaking. But I had just found out she had been unfaithful to me. That didn't even explain why she was crying like that. Their messages didn't end with a breakup or anything similar. When I checked, a message from my wife's best friend, let's call her Carol, came through. I didn't read that message, but I called her immediately. Asked if she knew what had happened. I told her I knew all about Tim. I just needed to know why my wife was crying in the bathtub. Carol told me Tim was my wife's former fiancé. They had reconnected and started meeting. The reason my wife was crying was because Tim had passed away. At that moment, I felt so many different emotions. Honestly, I felt something that can't be explained. I was angry and heartbroken about the affair. But I also felt sorry for my wife, because I did love her. But I was also very angry at her. I wanted to reach out and help her. But I also wanted to be as far away from her as possible. I told Carol she needed to come over, take care of my wife, because I thought I couldn't do it. I walked out of the bathroom. My wife shouted behind me, begging me to come back and be with her. I packed a bag for our children, so we could go stay with my parents for a few days. They didn't need to be around my wife while she was grieving. It would be very shocking for them. When Carol came over, I left. She tried to explain what happened before I left. But I didn't want to hear it. Carol was my wife's best friend. But we had a good relationship. I would joke with Carol. I often invited her to eat and drink with us. I felt betrayed. She even lied to me about the affair. I explained everything to my parents. When we were at their house, they gave me some very good advice about time. I felt betrayed. She even lied to me about it. I explained everything to my parents. When we were at their house, they gave me some very good advice about it. I felt sad about my decision to leave her. But they told me she had made that decision for me. Even though I knew she was grieving, I couldn't be with her. She had betrayed our marriage. The only thing I could do was leave her. She made her choice. I don't need to be responsible for her emotions. After I was hurt, I gave her the weekend at home to deal with everything alone. What she had to handle. When I came back next week to get some of my things, she begged me to give her a chance to explain herself and resolve these issues. I told her there was no explanation. She told another man she loved him and slept with him behind my back. However, I did find out that she actually was still engaged to her fiancé when we met. She dated me for a whole month before she broke up with him. I was supposed to be just a fling. But then he found out about me, and they broke up. I didn't know if she thought that would make the situation better, but obviously not. Then I knew she had always been a liar throughout our entire marriage. I told her I was leaving her. I had no hesitation about it. I knew she was still emotional because of Tim's passing. But that's not my business. I started the divorce process. As I was doing this, many people in my life contacted me, trying to make me the villain. My wife had been telling everyone I left her. After she found out someone close to her had passed away, she concealed the fact she found out the man she was with me had passed away. I made sure to clarify to everyone who contacted me, so they would know the truth. I wouldn't let her lie to me, make everyone we knew think I was a terrible person. After that, everyone saw how manipulative she could be. As far as I know, she lost a lot of friends in our town. The only person who supported her was Carol. She was the only one who knew about this matter. When it happened, we eventually got divorced. I kept the house and all of our assets. She moved in with her parents. She came to see our children on weekends. All of our assets. She moved in with her parents. She came to see our children on weekends. From the perspective of relationships and family dynamics, this story shows that deception and infidelity can severely damage the foundation of marriage. Intervention by a third party in family relationships, especially in tragic circumstances, makes the situation more complicated and can lead to serious consequences. Story 3: My girlfriend. We met in our third year of college. We went to a small school. It was hard not to notice everyone on campus. I saw her from time to time. I thought she was attractive. However, I never had a reason to talk to her. We were both in the same writing class in the first semester of our third year. As soon as I saw her, I sat next to her and started a conversation. We got along well. We worked together a lot for the class. A few weeks into the semester, I made a move on her, and she seemed happy that I did. The first summer we were apart was difficult because we were not used to long distance. We were about 4 hours apart from each other, so we could not meet often. We talked every day. We ended up making a few trips to see each other. During the summer, when our fall semester of senior year started, we were happy to finally be together again. Everything was fine when we started. I didn't notice anything strange happening between us. So I might have turned a blind eye to some things. In hindsight, I can see that she wanted to go out less with me and used her course load as an excuse. I saw her schedule at the beginning of the semester. Her course load was relatively light. She had a job, but she was only part-time. There was definitely time to go out more with me or spend more time with me. She just didn't want to. Every time we were together, she would often play with her phone. She was often secretive about what she was doing on her phone. It continued like this until the spring semester. I expressed my feelings a few times, but she assured me twice that she wanted to be with me. She was just busy or stressed. One night, I texted her, asking if I could come to her room and spend the night with her. It was a Friday night. I knew she didn't have to work the next morning. I just wanted to be with my girlfriend. She replied a few minutes later, telling me she had a headache from looking at the computer for too long and was going to bed. I was browsing Instagram, and I saw a notification that my girlfriend was online. She told me she was going to bed because she had been looking at screens all day and had a headache. I thought she was lying to me. Just didn't want to be with me because she was scrolling on Instagram. This realization was painful, but I thought it was what I needed. I was a bit sad. So my roommate asked me what happened. I explained everything to him. He told me it sounded like she had already ended the relationship. Then he casually mentioned that she might already be talking to someone else. I didn't immediately see the connection at first, but he encouraged me to investigate. I didn't think much of it at first, but after pondering his words for a few days, I decided it might be worth investigating. She really didn't want to spend too much time with me, and she was often on her phone and was secretive about it. It made sense. She might have been hiding something from me. I looked online for some clues about how to tell if someone is cheating and assessed my relationship based on these assessments. I noted her Snapchat score, whether she was online after she told me she was going to sleep, and the number of times she refused me when I asked if we could date or be together. From everything I found, the signs all pointed to her possibly being with someone else. One weekend we planned to go to a concert together. I bought the tickets and everything. She backed out at the last minute, telling me she had to work. She never worked on Saturdays, so it looked to me like an immediate lie. I told her I could accept it. I would take my roommate to the concert. I told him what happened. He made me believe that she canceled to be with another man. He convinced me to believe that. I was very upset and anxious about it. On our way to the concert, we checked her Snapchat score. I saw her score increasing when she was supposed to be working. I could also tell from the map on Snapchat that she was at a restaurant in the city, not near her workplace near our college campus. My roommate decided we weren't going to the concert, but to see what was happening at that restaurant. When we got there, she was obviously on a date with a man. They were sitting together. He was holding her. They were laughing and getting very close. We even saw them kissing a few times. Seeing all that broke my heart. Everything my roommate said was true. She had been cheating on me and lying to me all year. I don't know how long this has been going on, but she had been acting for a while. As we were waiting, my roommate started browsing her social media profiles, trying to figure out who the man was. He quickly pieced together the truth and found out that the man she was dating was her stepbrother. I knew her parents were divorced, and her mother remarried quite hastily in the spring of our junior year. However, I had never met her family. We hadn't been dating long, and her family had never come to campus for family weekends or similar events. I was shocked that she was cheating on me with her stepbrother. All the people. I told my roommate I was going to confront her the next day and end everything between us. It was he who persuaded me to handle it differently. He helped me plan how I would take revenge on both of them. Her family didn't come to small things. But I knew. They were coming to our graduation. I pretended everything was normal between us. Until then. The day before our graduation every year, our university holds a big banquet for students and their families. My girlfriend and I plan to attend together with our families so we could meet each other. At first, everything went smoothly. Everyone was getting along well. I actually drank too much. The university president was planning to give a speech at the dinner. So there was a live microphone on stage. I felt a bit confident in the room. So I walked up to the microphone. The faculty around were a bit surprised. But they didn't stop me immediately. They should have stopped me. I first congratulated all the classmates for making it through the year and arriving at the graduation. I turned my attention to my girlfriend. As I spoke, many people in the room turned to look at her. At first, it seemed that I was just talking about how cute she was. Then I mentioned that I was surprised to see her dating her stepbrother. When I brought it up, the room fell silent. Everyone was getting the seriousness of what I was saying. They were all shaking their heads in denial. I explained that I saw them kissing each other, and that she had been cheating on me with him all year. People started taking out their phones, recording what I was saying. But I was taken away from the microphone by a faculty member before I could elaborate. However, her mother and stepfather were asking her a lot of questions. She tried to answer them. My parents took me out of the room, asking why I humiliated her like that. I just laughed and left in the end. My girlfriend texted me later that night, telling me how I humiliated her in front of the whole class. I really didn't care. She had been lying to me, treating me like trash all year. I finally found out the reason. I think she should be a little embarrassed about everything. Our graduation was the next day. People were still talking about the dinner. I could see my girlfriend was embarrassed. I could feel people talking about her behind her back throughout the ceremony. I really think I ruined her day. It was a few years ago. But I don't care what happened anymore now. I realized that not everyone will be like her. However, I am now very aware of the signs of cheating. I pay attention to this in my relationships. Thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to today's story. If you like it, please consider liking and subscribing. If you haven't, please feel free to share your thoughts on the event in the comments below. Take care.